Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to a special episode of SeeThroughPanel, comic book discussion and review show. My name is Cole Harvey. I'm here with Fahed Rahman.
Hello, everyone. And today we are joined by Stephanie Cooke. Stephanie is an award-winning writer-editor based out of Toronto. She's a comic book fan, avid gamer, movie watcher, lover of music and sarcasm. She has a purveyor of too many projects and thrives in chaos. Her writing has been featured in Mark Millar's Miller World, Annual, Wayward Sisters, The Secret Loves of Geek Girls, Toronto's Comics Anthology, and more. Her debut graphic novel, Oh My Gods, is when is it set for release?
It's
Stephanie?
out now, actually. I think that's probably an old bio that I haven't updated.
So it's available now, and it's being published by HMH Kids. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And she will also be having 2 further graphic novels being published fairly soon. It's actually in 2021, Paranorthern in spring 2021, and the sequel to Oh My God in autumn 2021. So hello, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. It's Saturday. It's the weekend. It's, my time to catch up on all of the shows I didn't watch during the week. So I'm doing great.
Good to hear.
That's good to hear. Well, just start ahead with the questions. So kind of the first question I'd like to ask is, how do you think the Canadian comic book scene is doing at the moment?
I mean, all of the industries are kind of hurting at the moment with the pandemic. It's hard to kind of be like, everyone's thriving. No one's really thriving right now. People are reading a lot, but that doesn't always necessarily, equal success. That being said, creators in the Canadian comic book industry, I think, are some of the best in the world, in my completely biased, opinion. So I think we're all trying to kind of survive, thrive, and do what we can in the meantime. And, that's all any of us can really do.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how a lot of industries are feeling now. So
yeah.
So my question is, I think a lot of readers, we have a perception of what editing a comic means, and I hope I do. I think I do. But to you, how do you edit comics just in general?
Yeah, I mean, editing is such a really unique thing to the comic book industry. My parents aren't comic book fans and really are baffled that I work in this industry and just don't understand it. So when I tell them I'm editing something, as prose book readers, their mind is oh, you edit, you look through, you're looking through just a script or a manuscript and giving feedback and correcting stuff, which I mean is part of it, but with editing in comics, it's just so much more than that. You have scripts, but you are also then comparing those scripts to several stages of art sometimes along the way. You might work with one writer or one creator who writes and does all the art, and that maybe narrows down how often you're going back and forth, but sometimes you're working with numerous people. I just wrapped up the second volume of Tartarus at Image Comics with Johnny Christmas and Andrew Cronke and Hilary Jenkins and Jim Campbell. And, there's so many different things that you have to stay on top of and schedules that you have to be accountable for. And editing in comics is also looking at the art to make sure that it reads well, and people are going to understand what's going on in the story, and it matches the script, and the lettering works, and the colors are consistent, and it's just such a interesting thing to edit comics versus editing virtually anywhere else.
That sounds like a lot of work. You are my hero.
Yeah.
Editors are like unsung heroes, like truly. Like I constantly I'm so appreciative of my editors that I work with, and I think they're like baffled by it because I'm just kind of like, you're amazing. Wow, do this. And like it's just because like I know like what they have to go through and the hoops that they, jump through every single day to get a story made. And like to me, it's an incredible job and it's vastly underrated.
Yeah, it's I think you mentioned briefly there that there's no kind of one way of making comics, so it's kind of, I imagine as an editor kind of adapting to kind of like different teamwork dynamics, different script formats, and all that sort of thing must be quite challenging. I imagine. Yeah.
Like there's no one set like way to tell a story or like to write a script specifically in comics. So you do get like a wide variety of styles when you are working. Like I take on freelance projects and I work with creators kind of at every level. And that's how it's been since the start of my editing career. Like I've, always kind of worked with a really big array of talent that has their experience levels again vary. So it's interesting to see the different takes and the different ways people tell a story and tell specifically a comic book story. But it's also sometimes incredibly daunting to just not have that one universal format and kind of just like have to kind of go through that sometimes with newer creators and help them also, in addition to everything else you're doing, kind of help them with formatting that's going to help their collaborators later on.
Yeah, exactly. Cole, which question should we put to her next? Should we ask her about her scripting process, or do you want me to go on to the next one in the list?
I like to know about scripting process.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's do you want to put that question to her then Cole?
Yeah. So just as a reader, I know there are several types of formats, and I'm sure there's a huge array of styles. But what is your personal, as a writer, what is your format? Do you try to pick, and does that come from you as an editor? Do you think your format that you've created?
Like what I use, like when I write, you mean?
Yeah, when you're writing, not editing. Yep.
Yeah, like I've definitely. I think I run a website as well called Creator Resource. It has like a bunch of tools and kind of stuff there. I think I have some sample scripts kind of up there. Maybe I don't. If not, I will maybe do that. But like I kind of have a mishmash script of some of the things that I've seen over the years. Like I spent a good chunk of time in advance of actually ever writing something, kind of talking to other creators and especially artists to get their feedback on what are some best practices when it comes to scripts. Like what do they like to see? What do they want to hear? Or like what do they want to kind of see and have covered when it comes to being handed a script? And so like Jim Zub has a really great like script example up on his website. Fred Van Lent has what I think is kind of the unofficial standard. And I've taken kind of points from both of those and then just kind of integrated things that I've found out from artists along the way. So like I write long form mostly right now. I do love a good short story, but like now I kind of predominantly am working on projects that are typically like 200 pages long at least. So, I break things down into chapters and I have like a format, but the thing that I really like to do so that artists can easily reference stuff is like for each chapter, I write like chapter 1 and then dot whatever page we're on. So if it's like page 1, chapter 1, it's like 1.1. And then like throughout the rest of the script, it's like page 1.2, page 1.3, like that sort of thing. And then for chapter 2 is like chapter 2.1, etc. But the point of that is it makes it really easy for me then in like later on in the chapter be like, this page mirrors chapter 1.1 panel 3, and an artist can easily then control F and type in 1.1 and jump to that section immediately.
Okay.
So they're able to easily find like specific reference points. So that's like something I've found extremely helpful from for writing long form, so that it's easy to jump around for artists. I don't know if that's even really like what you were kind of getting at.
Yeah, I mean,
but
because I write comics myself, and really the format that I use depends on the artist that I'm working with. So with the first comic I wrote, it was basically a short film. It was a film script, because John, the guy that I was working with, he felt that gave him the freedom to panel out and lay out the pages the way that he wanted. But other artists that I've worked with want detailed panel layouts with angles and everything else. And then other artists are kind of like, well, give me the number of panels on the page and the dialogue and like quick description. So I think it depends on like the team dynamic that you're working with as well.
And it's always good to talk to like a creator beforehand, if it's possible, to ask what they prefer, like how much description they like, how much kind of like direction. I try and kind of have a middle ground where I'm giving them enough like information, but I'm not over dictating what needs to be on the page. Like I just want to give them, you know, what absolutely needs to be there, and then give them the freedom to kind of interpret that a bit. Like I know a lot of people who do use the screenwriting format, and like for me, that's too formal. I don't enjoy writing in that way personally, but I do know that's also very much, you know, there's a big crossover between comic creators and like TV and film, and that's for a very obvious reason, that the format can be extremely similar. So I get that inclination to kind of use that terminology and the angles and the shots and stuff to kind of translate to comics. But I personally do it a little less formal, I suppose.
Yeah. Kind of, since you've had your first kind of book published by HMH, how has that changed the way that you approach writing, in terms of, has it had a big effect, or has it affected your processes at all? Really?
I don't think so. You know, like I think there's a certain degree of, as a creator, you should always be like learning and growing and changing things as you kind of discover new ways that help you and help your collaborators. But I think like my scripts, like I personally find them pretty easy to, like the way I lay them out, to be easy for me to kind of navigate. And I've worked with HMH kids a few times now, and like they've gotten used to how I kind of use, or to how I tell stories. And like I have a pretty, like, I guess, consistent way right now that kind of just, it's tried and true. It gets the job done, and it's clear and concise. And, you know, like I don't feel the need to kind of change the format of that too much. Like as far as storytelling goes too, you know, like I mean, you always grow as a creator, and how you write and what the stories, how you tell those stories changes and evolves. But like, you know, and like it's taken years for like a couple things to come out, and like by the time you get to that, like you're like, oh, I would have done this differently now, and I would have done this differently.
Yeah. yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing, because like it takes so long to make a comic. But like as far as kind of my process goes, I like outline really, really heavily in advance, and then I just kind of like write it all out like after I have the bones and the skeleton of it. So, you know, that so far hasn't changed a ton.
Yes. Okay. That's fascinating.
Kind of the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach, which I agree with.
Yeah.
And you know, like if I work with an artist at any point in time and they're like, hey, I want this to be something that you add in if you can. Like, the artist's job is so hard, and like it's so, you know, it takes so much time. So I'm never gonna say no to that. Like, I'm always gonna be open to feedback. I'm always gonna be open to hearing what my collaborators want me to do for them. And maybe if I try something new, it's like, oh, this is really cool. I like doing this. And maybe it changes then. But so far, I haven't had a need to kind of adjust that, other than, again, small tweaks here and there. So yeah, again, try it and true.
So
yeah, go ahead, Cole.
So I have a question. I think you probably already answered it, and I know what you're going to say based on your other things. But so for comic creators of any kind, there's usually a collaborative. It's not like writing a novel. You have to collaborate a lot more. You're working with other people a lot more. Do you like that approach? Do you like collaborating more than if you could, say, just make a comic by yourself? Do you enjoy that more, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I do doodle. Like, I have fun kind of drawing on my own, and I like telling my own kind of small stories every now and again. But like, I could never do what an artist, like, in a long form capacity does. You know, like, it takes so much time. It takes so much skill and talent. And as nice as it would sometimes be to just be able to guide my own vision and tell my own story in full, I love collaborating with somebody else. I love giving somebody like character descriptions and a scene, and seeing somebody else interpret my words and bring that to life. Like, that is never not magical to me in every way, shape, and form. Like, my editor will send me pages and be like, do you have any feedback? And I'm like, I've got like twinkle eyes. Like, I'm just like, no, it's beautiful. Like, I'm honestly just fully in awe every single time I see what somebody else has done with something I wrote. And I think that's the best part about comics, is the collaboration and the fact that you get to work with somebody else who helps bring this vision to life and becomes a part of the story for readers to enjoy. Like, that is hands down like my favorite part of it.
That's really interesting. So your graphic novels come out, and this is a question we put to Francois Vigneault as well, and last year. So what is it like releasing a book during lockdown? I imagine it must be kind of quite frustrating. It's your first graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine you had, I know if I was having my first graphic novel published, I'd be kind of imagining going down to comic book fairs and bookstores and doing tours and things like this. I was just wondering what that experience is kind of been like for you.
Yeah, it's really hard, to be honest. Like, I'm a big convention goer, and I've spent like years networking and going to these conventions and just like dreaming of the day that I would have my own booth and my own stuff, and I would get to like show people what I've done. And, like, that's definitely something that has been a long time aspiration. So like, for my book came out in January, and in Toronto, where I am, we were in lockdown. So like, I only got to see my book on a store shelf for the first time about like 2 weeks ago. So like, it had been out for like almost 2 full months before I got to see it. And I saw it at like the first major bookstore like this week on like Wednesday. So it's really surreal. Like, it sucks in a lot of ways, because like, I have spent years in retail. Like, I have like a decade of retail experience, and I've worked at friends' booths before, and like, I'm a really good salesperson. Like, I know if I was at a table, and I know if I had the books, I could get it into people's hands. And so it's frustrating to not be able to, do that and have that interaction with people, and to talk to maybe kids who have read it. And, like, I love that part of storytelling and comic writing. I say that like I'm also deeply introverted. I have like a war with myself constantly. Like I'm extrovertedly introverted. Like I'm extremely on when I'm out and about and I'm happy, but then I just need a week to like not talk to anybody and like live in a hole. But like I've done so much kind of schlepping of comics before with short stories and anthologies that I've done. And, you know, I really wanted that experience with my own books, and hopefully someday that'll happen. But it's really just not the same thing to be doing like Zoom stuff and virtual events where it's like a book launch. Like it doesn't feel as real. Like I don't want to say it diminishes it in any way. Like I still feel accomplished. I still feel really proud of the work we've done, and you know, the fact that we have a book on shelves. But like there's definitely some degree of separation that like I kind of feel was almost kind of like taken from us in a way, you know? Like it's hard to not feel a little bit sad that I don't get to have that moment with like our debut book.
Yeah, I can imagine it must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, the whole process, I assume, is entirely different just for this past year. Really unfortunate. But, I mean, you put the book out and you've got a second one coming out, so I'm sure things are going very well. So that's good.
Yeah, it's exciting. Like, Paranorthern's out in July, and it's a lot of like right now with Oh My Gods, I'm doing a lot of like legwork to kind of make connections with more bookstores and, you know, all of these places that like the comic market doesn't necessarily have as big a connection to. And it's like, you know, I'm trying to learn the ropes more of launching a virtual book so that I'm like even more prepared for Paranorthern, and I can kind of like adapt to that situation and, you know, hopefully have a different experience, you know, ideally maybe by the time Oh My Gods 2 is out, which was fall, but it's in January, it's going to be like a year after the release of the first one. But like maybe by then I will be able to do like an actual for real book launch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like I'm not hopeful for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
I'm just again gonna have to be like resigned to be grateful that I just have things coming out into the world, which makes it sound like I'm not exceptionally grateful. It's just, you know, one of those things that you wish you could be around people to celebrate with them.
I think it's almost a little bit like you know, last year when Liverpool won their first Premier League title, but they weren't able to kind of share it with the fans. And it's kind of like, well, we've done this amazing thing, but it's kind of like it should be kind of like a group activity in some way. So yeah, I totally get that. So just talking a little bit about the book. So it's kind of based on Greek mythology, and kind of recently in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of re-examination of the Greek myths. You know, I'm thinking of books by like Circe by Madeline Miller, or A Thousand Ships by Natalie Haynes. And I was just wondering if those re-examinations influenced your adaptation of those myths to this of your graphic novel. And maybe a follow-up question to that would be kind of, what are your kind of like current favorite Greek myth adaptations that kind of maybe also influenced the way that you went about approaching the story?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like the thing is, and I've touched on this like a little bit, but like graphic novels take a really long time to make. And even before that, this concept was something that was in the works for like years. So we had the seeds of this before, not like, you know, before anybody. Like clearly it was something that was like making a comeback, and like lots of people were permeating like on Greek mythology. But like we definitely had this idea going for like a really long time, and we're just kind of like in our own bubble with it. And it's funny because like you put the idea out there, it gets like picked up, and you're working on it, and then all these things like start coming out, and you're like, oh God, they're gonna cancel my book. There's like too much Greek mythology stuff out there. But like that was also a reason why it took so long to get picked up in the first place. Like in a market, an industry where Percy Jackson exists, like the question constantly gets to ask to creators, like, why should we pick up your book when this is already a wildly successful franchise that deals with that? It was like a huge thing of feedback from like so many different publishers. So like, I don't think we ever really kind of like picked from like stories, like reimaginings or anything of like Greek mythology. Like that wasn't something that we drew inspiration from. Like for me, TV shows like Clone High and books like Lumberjanes and, like kind of just like silly, fun, whimsical things were kind of the big inspiration for how we told that story and the voice we told the story in. And the myths themselves, we were just like really big Greek mythology fans. So like I have been reading Greek mythology stories since I was like a kid. And like they were probably way too adult for me, but like I loved them. And they just like stuck with me over the years. And I've always known that I wanted to do something in that sandbox. So, like I never kind of looked at other stuff and was like, what can I do like that pulls from this and this and this? But that being said, like I like have caught up on a lot of Greek mythology related stuff since like we finished up with the first and second book. And it's so hard to like watch and read and play things and not be like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I did that. Like it's really difficult. And to kind of your follow-up, like Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe is so good.
It's amazing.
It's so good. And like the way she just like sticks to so much of the core mythology. And like I read that and it's almost painful how good it is. And I'm such a big fan. And, like I'm a big video game player too. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey is just like an intersection of all the things I love. Like I love the franchise, and they just were like, what if we made this exact game for Stephanie? Like, what if? And then they went one step further and were like, what if we made that exact game for Stephanie and then we made it sillier? And they did like Immortals Phoenix Rising, which I am in love with. And I've also been playing Hades on the Switch. And like, I beat it a while ago, and I do not do this. Like once I'm kind of done with a game, I'm usually done with a game. But like I keep going back. I love it.
It's
like,
the best.
It's so good.
I just beat it like 2 weeks ago.
It's so good. And like I'm not really a dungeon crawler kind of person. Like I do play them, but like it's definitely not my kind of favorite like genre. But like the character designs, the music, the story, like it's all so rewarding and addictive. And like you don't have to play it for long. Like you can do one run through, and like it's so good. I beat my best time today. It was so satisfying. Like it's awesome. What's your favorite weapon?
I don't want to be judged here. It's the gun.
Oh, okay. I like the gauntlet. Like
my friend loves it.
Yeah, the gauntlet, and like I just did the run that I just finished. That was my best. Is with the spear. So
my best friend's with the spear too.
yeah. My friend's trying to like convince me that the arrow is very good, but I don't know. I'm not buying it. It's
same.
Okay. So
you gotta charge it up. It takes too much time.
Yeah, I just want to like. It's really just satisfying to just hack and slash and button mash. So good. But yeah, I think like you also mentioned Circe too, as far as like books go. I dabble in like a lot of different things. I'm reading a book called Lore right now by Alexandra Brackham. I'm basically steeping myself in like Greek mythology since I haven't had to write it for like a little bit.
And I was actually curious. You said earlier you were looking at these things to put into for tone wise to put into your book, and you like these whimsical things, and I've definitely noticed that looking at both the things you've written and edited. There's definitely through most of them, there seems to be this very whimsical tone. It's very different from, let's say, the edgier other side. People appreciate comics for different things, but I seem to think yours is kind of in the bracket with the people that like a little bit of camp. They like that whimsical element. They don't want it too close. What do you think about that kind of tone? Like, what made you go for that kind of tone in your work?
Yeah, like I think that's just kind of how I am as a person. Like I'm very naturally drawn to just like telling stories about my life. I'm very drawn, like I have a weird magnet, like the biggest weird magnet. And so, even with like my friend group, like I tell stories in a very specific way. And I think I have like a very kind of dry sense of humor and kind of like, I love dad jokes and puns. So, like I think there's just there's a lot of me in my stories. There's some people who try and kind of disconnect themselves and kind of just like be like, how would I tell this story as this person? And like, I like to do that, but also kind of just infuse bits of me into that. And I think that just kind of like is how I am. I'm very like, I definitely have ADHD. I'm all over the place. And I just I'm easily excited about stuff. I am passionate about things. And I try and bring that into the stories too. Like I like telling stories about characters and what they're kind of, what they're going through and what they're into versus kind of focusing on a theme and telling a story around that. Like I find themes come up kind of organically when you tell a good story around like well-rounded characters. So I don't know, like I think I just try and infuse like a lot of my world and like what kind of stuff I've gone through into stories, even though they're fiction and fantasy and all that stuff. And I'm drawn to those stories for editing that kind of play on that too. And, people who are like clearly kind of in touch with like their inner child and just really like having fun telling stories are, things that I'm passionate about.
So you mentioned there that you like your dad jokes. I was just wondering if you've got any dad jokes that you'd like to tell us.
Oh
no.
Okay. Skeleton walked into a bar and says, I'm gonna need a beer and a mop. I don't know.
Oh, guys, it took me so long. Oh, no, I'm dumb. Oh, no. I was like, why does he need the mop?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got like a couple of standby book-related one. So, while preparing for this for the interview today, I was doing a bit of reading. But unfortunately, a book fell on my head. I blame myself.
Oh no, this is not my bracket of humor. This is.
Yeah.
I inherited a lot of my comic books from my older brother. A lot of them had their last page missing. Yeah, I had to draw my own conclusions.
Oh my God.
I'm like a big fan of dumb jokes. Like I used to do a podcast as well, like on comics years ago, and my co-host like loathes them. So like we're still friends, and like every single time like a pun comes up, I just like send them to him. Like I text him and he's just like, Stephanie. Like I can hear his voice still, even though it's just like through text, I can hear his like disapproval, and it like brings me joy.
I wish he were here to help me, to stand by my side here.
I'm sorry.
Oh no.
So you've talked a little bit about your work as an editor. I was just wondering, when you're writing writing kind of how do you decide whether or not to kind of accept editorial notes from the editor that you're working with? How, is that a difficult thing to kind of like do, or kind of does it depend on what they're asking you to change?
I mean, for me, notes and integrating notes is definitely the hardest part of the process for me. Like, I definitely take like at least double the amount of time to edit versus like to write a story. At least, like, it just takes me so long. But that being said, I have a fantastic editor. I've worked with this woman named Lily a few times now, and she's brilliant. And the first time, like, we had a call, like it was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be your editor. This is how I envision the story. And can you envision kind of me asking you to change this and this and this? And like, they kind of have a conversation with you before you even kind of sign up to kind of gauge whether what direction they want to go in is the direction you want to go in. So you don't have to kind of do anything with your story that you don't want to do, so then, like, once you are in it and you're working with them, all notes are kind of like, it's prefaced when your editor sends notes that you don't have to integrate changes. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, like, editors are unsung heroes. Like, they see what you can't see because you're too close to a story. Like, you've sat with it for too long and you're not objective. So when an editor is giving you notes, it's because something isn't working. And when I get them, I'm initially a little bit like, oh, there's so many notes. Oh, we have to change this. Oh, they want to kill this character. And not like kill a character, but like, it's like, this character serves no purpose. Get rid of them. So I call them killing it off. But they're just being ridden out of existence, which now sounds worse that I say it like that. But like, like, it's like with Paranorthern, I had a character in there and like, I literally wrote them in to be a bad joke. Like, it was like Monty Python and the Holy Grail joke. And I was so pleased with myself. I was just like, oh, I'm so funny. And like, my editor was like, why don't you make that character this character instead, because they already have a connection to the main character. And I'm like, I don't want to kill them. This is so funny though. And then like, 5 minutes later, it's like, no, that's a valid note. That's a good note. I should have done that. And so like, sometimes it's hard to let things go, but you have to kind of process the notes that you're given and decide what's worth fighting like for and what isn't. Most of the time, an editor isn't dictating things that they don't like. Like, it's not about that. They're being as objective as they can. They want you to tell the best story possible, and they're giving you feedback so that you can do that. So you can certainly push back on things, but I think the more open you are to feedback from an editor who is also a collaborator in my eyes, the better your story is ultimately going to be.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Kind of a trust-based thing. You gotta see where they're coming from and kind of understand that they're on the same page as you.
Yeah, and there are bad editors out there. Like, there are people who are like, I want this. Like, I want this to be changed. I don't think this works. And, they're not doing it for the right reasons. And there are people who have bad experiences with editors and don't like working with editors. And, fine, if you've been burned by an editor like that, I get it. But I think largely a good editor is essential to your process. Like, no matter what stage you are in your career, having a second set of eyes, an objective set of eyes, is going to make whatever you work on better. And that is supposing they are a good editor. But like, I'll preface it again with, a good editor will make your work better.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was actually curious. You mentioned earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about Creator Resource and what it is, what it's about?
Yeah, it's like my passion project. So, like, when I first started getting into the industry, it was pretty like there was a lot of walls up. There's a lot of just like people didn't talk about things as much, and it was hard to really figure out what to do, where to go, how to start. And the more I talked to people, the more I realized that was like something that was unanimous. And there was just kind of this like, well, I figured it out along the way. I had like a mentor and all this stuff, and like I connected with this person. But like that's not a feasible situation for everybody. Not everybody has the ability to go to conventions and network and find a mentor. And, you know, I wanted to create a place where how to kind of navigate the industry and what the industry was all about, and just like as many points of view as I could kind of get. I wanted to put those on a site to help people understand the industry better, first and foremost, and break down kind of like the transparency issues with the industry and hopefully thrive. Like there's a lot of different avenues now in comics. There's like webtoons and tapas and webcomics generally. And, in addition to self-publishing and publishing at one of the like comic houses, and there's the book market. There's so many different facets to the industry and how to break into it. And I want to give people the tools to do that at any level and not have to kind of rely on, like a network that they might not have access to.
Yeah, I completely understand you. Where you're coming from. So I'm based in the UK, and our comics laureate recently, last year, did a UK comics creator survey, and like the results from that were absolute. When you're not surprised by something, but it's still kind of like devastating anyway.
Yeah,
it's kind of the amount of people that see creating comics as kind of like their vocation but can't earn a living from it is like horrendous. It's like horrendously low number. And so they did a series of workshops kind of addressing kind of how can we get more people engaged. And I think one of the good side effects of lockdown has been that people that wouldn't go to comic book fairs or create these networks at those sorts of events have been creating those networks through virtual conferences and stuff, because they feel a little bit more comfortable. It's not as an intimidating an atmosphere to attend. So I think there have been kind of like good things. Like I'm a part of Work in Progress Comics based out of London, and like it's a London-based comic creating community, but we get people coming into the Zoom calls from Manchester and Spain and all these sorts of different areas. So it's just, I think that has been kind of like one good aspect, kind of like the lockdown thing is kind of maybe it's opened up the space a little bit more.
Yeah. And, I think it's also like you touched on something too, where people were kind of like talking about how like creators couldn't kind of earn a living like on this. And it's important to kind of talk about that specifically, that angle in a bigger way. Like I, for instance, have a full-time day job still, and I edit and I write comics. Like I juggle numerous things constantly. And I think it's important for people to know that like the industry, especially right like off the bat, doesn't pay very well. And like you just have to like, I don't want to say you just have to love it. Like you should get paid too. Like that's not, what I'm kind of getting at otherwise, but like it's an industry that makes itself hard to be sustainable in terms of kind of like thriving and living in. And I agree. Like I think like being in lockdown has definitely opened up a lot of doors to kind of help people network and have those conversations and real conversations about the industry and how, like you can, how you can find your own place in it too. And everything.
Yeah, it's really scary that you're saying that, because like the United States, North American comic book market is so much larger than the market in the United Kingdom, and it's just kind of like this thing where if you're a creative person, you're just kind of, well, you know, it's kind of, you know, with the same with actors or musicians or whatever it is. It's just kind of, well, of course you're going to be paid less money for the skills that you've developed over this period of time. And I think, you know, especially during lockdown, people have turned to stories, turned to music, turned to books. And I think there needs to be a reckoning about how we reward financially the people that basically got us through this period.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just,
I
yeah,
do.
but yeah.
And I don't mean to be disheartening, like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's just one of those things where you kind of have to be realistic. Like I'm fully in, you know, like on every artist and creator's side where it's just like, we need to get paid more. We need to like make a living wage. Like we need to be taken seriously. It's just like, we're in this place where we're working on that, and like the advocacy is there and change is slowly happening. But, you know, like realistically, I don't have the means to live off of my work. And like, I think like I've had like a moderate amount of success so far, but you know, like it's really not enough, you know, like it's hard to kind of make a living. And at the end of the day though, I think it's also very important to note that like, wow, again, we should get paid for what we do. First and foremost, you should be making stories for yourself. You should always be your own number one fan. Like, if you're not having fun writing your stories, if you're not enjoying what you're telling, like it's going to show in what you do. And I think it's an important lesson as a creator to kind of just like make sure. I mean, ideally, obviously, we want to have commercial success and like that we can afford to live off something that we want to make our careers. But I think it's an important lesson first and foremost too, to just make sure that you are telling, you know, stories that you want to tell.
Just out of curiosity, I asked most people we talked to about this. During the lockdown and just recently in general, what have you been digging on in terms of comics? What have you been reading lately?
Yeah, I'm the worst. Like, so I used to, again, I did a comic book show for like 4 years. And whenever we interviewed people, and I'd be like, I would ask this question. I'd be like, what are you reading right now? And they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so busy. And I'd be like, wow, I hope I'm never this person. Like, and I am partially this person, but like, I've been trying to kind of like read a lot of prose, and like my goal this year is reading all of the physical books I own that I haven't read yet.
Oh, good luck. That's always hard.
I've given myself like a really insurmountable task, and my bedside table is like anxiety tower is what I'm going to call it now. But like that being said, you know, I do still read comics. And like, I love the medium. I read a lot of middle grade and YA right now because it's just like a lot more fun and kind of like low stakes for me. And so like, what did I currently just finish? I finished reading a comic recently called Timo the Adventurer, which is like a delightful graphic novel. It was just like released not too long ago. I think it was published in France first, and they just released the English edition of it. I just finished reading Bloom by Kevin Panetta and Savannah Ganesho. Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer by Gillian Gores, which is set in Toronto, and it's a delight. I read Girl Haven by Lila Sturgis and Megan Carter. 1 Year at Ellesmere by Faith Erin Hicks. I've been reading a lot of like Canadian creators.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like I've been trying to kind of go back through like some of the Wave 2 TKO Studios comics. Like The Banks was really great by Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle. And City of Secrets I read recently too by Victoria Ying.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff that's going to go on my list now.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's like so many things. I'm like looking. I was like bringing up what I've been reading, but yeah, they're all like some of them, they vary. Like, you know, there's a couple like middle grade things. There's a couple YA things in there, and a couple adultier things. But I like reading like a variety of stuff. Like I really love like different storytelling, and I love, reading like adaptations of like French stories kind of, and like European comics in general that get over here are really interesting to me because like, there's a lot of really great different ways that they tell stories. I'm trying to think, there's like this other comic that I just read not long ago. I'm like, if my sound gets weird, I'm like looking behind me at my bookshelf because I can't remember what it's called, and it's stunning. Hang on. Oh, The Golden Age.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. And I just like, there's just this different style to like a lot of like European comics that is just like that you don't get here. Like we definitely have beautiful comics in North America, like don't get me wrong, but like storytelling is different all over the world and to every single creator. And I think it is deeply important as a creator to explore those and to try different things and to try creators work from like all over the world to see what people do and how they tell their stories. So yeah.
I was listening to one of your previous interviews. I think it was, I can't remember who I think it was I can't remember who it was, but you kind of mentioned there kind of you stopped reading The Walking Dead because it just got kind of a little bit too heavy and kind of collecting single issues and things like that. It just became, and having that refresh and having that variety in the type of stuff that you're reading is kind of really important as well. So yeah, it's kind of
like I just The Walking Dead, like I can appreciate that on a storytelling level. Like it's an incredible feat. Like who gets 100+ issues these days? And I think it's a great story. It's just like so bleak and it's so dark and
it's relentlessly grim.
Yeah, it is. And it just like doesn't have a point to it, which I guess in a way is kind of the point too. And I've really burnt out of that style of comics. Just, the constant, this will change the world forever. This will change the multiverse forever. Like everything is just so high stakes and everything winds up not being that high stakes in the end. And like, I like those stories too from time to time, but it just got to a point where like I didn't want to follow those stories anymore. And I was kind of just like more interested in self-contained stories. And I still read like, serialized things from time to time. And I tend to be more of a trade waiter for those things now. But it's hard sometimes to kind of keep up with the doom and gloom. Like when you kind of just like feel a bit beaten down by the world around you day to day, I want to escape.
I completely understand that. So I just wanted to ask you about your future project. You've got Paranorthern coming out, and Oh My Gods 2, The Forgotten Maze in January. So I was just wondering if you wanted to and you've got Pillow Talk as well. So so if you wanted to just maybe tell our listeners a little bit about each of those.
Yeah, for sure. I love talking, so like honestly, I could go on forever. But yeah, so Paranorthern is the story of a young witch and her 3 friends who are a witch girl, a ghost, and a pumpkin head, which is a sentient pumpkin. And basically one day, Abby accidentally opens up a portal to an alternate dimension, and chaos bunnies come forth and they start causing chaos. Have you seen Lilo and Stitch?
Of course.
Okay, so these bunnies are like Stitch. Like they're not inherently necessarily evil. They're just, like mischievous.
They just like to party.
Yeah, they like to party and like chew through wires and chew through car tires and just cause like ultimate chaos. So Abby is like really afraid. So that she'll be in trouble for this. And so her and her friends decide that they need to stop the, wait for it, a hopcalypse.
Yes.
Yeah. So they team up and find a way to make everything right in their town of North Haven. So that is out in July. And then, oh my God, 2, The Forgotten Maze is out in January. And that is about a maze that is in the bottom of their junior high. And who lies in the center of the maze, which, if you know anything about Greek mythology, might be a little bit like, you might know. But we have like a fun little kind of like twist on it. It involves video games and, other modern stuff that Karen from New Jersey is bringing to Mount Olympus. And then Pillow Talk is not out until 2023. So that one's like a long ways away.
Yeah.
But that's my first YA story. So I've been dabbling in the wonderful world of middle grade and writing for that. And Pillow Talk is a story about an underground pillow fight league, which is a very real thing and is based on a true story in which I accidentally once got roped into being in a pillow fight league that was like being filmed for the BBC, who was coming to Toronto, and we needed to do this like event. And I thought it would just be like pillow fighting, but it turned out to be like roller derby, and anything goes as long as the pillow is the first point of contact. I saw, what's that comedian? He's Sri Lankan, Ramesh
Ranganathan.
Yes, he was the host of the show. And I saw a petite little woman who was like 5'1" put him in a pillow chokehold. I have video of this.
What is going on right now? Is this real?
It is real. It's called the PFL, the Pillow Fight League. And so I wrote a fictional world in which this has taken off, and it's like a thing kind of akin to roller derby. And in the real world, I fought in 2 pillow fights, and I rolled my ankle, and I thought I broke it, and I had to go to the ER to try. I had to try and like then tell them how I thought I broke my ankle. It's like, well, I was in an extreme pillow fight league, and they were like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. Did they administer any drugs tests?
He was like, the nurse was remarkably nice and was like, "Whoa, that's like really cool." He was like young and like awesome, but I was definitely dreading going because I was like, I don't want to have to explain this. But so Pillow Talk is about a woman named Grace, and she has to explore kind of coming out of her shell a little bit and exploring the world beyond through this league and by getting invested in it, which I've melded a little bit more kind of wrestling WWE into it than is actually kind of in the real PFL, which is kind of defunct at the moment. But that will be out in 2023. So it's like, I don't think I actually explained what the story is.
Oh, you got me hooked.
Yeah, it's about a pillow fight league is the bottom line.
Okay. Yeah. Cole, have you got any more questions you want to put to Stephanie?
I think we're going pretty long. I think you can do your classic final question if you'd like there, Fred.
What's my classic final question?
I'll do it this time. It's my first time.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about or that we should have asked you?
Oh, I mean, again, I love to talk. Like I could just talk forever. But I think you both did a great job. I don't think I have anything else to intentionally, ramble about.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. It is I think I can speak for Cole. We both really enjoyed talking to you, and your projects sound really exciting. For our listeners, we've had a few technical issues with the last 2 episodes that we recorded. They were eaten by Zencastr, we're trying to recover them at the moment, so we might need to re-record those episodes. Just a selfish self plug. I've got 2 podcasts coming out, so I'm going to be doing the new season of Inconstant that's launching next month, I think, and Audiobookish, my audiobook review podcast, has a few episodes out, so if you could please subscribe to that as well. Cole, anything else to say?
Not really. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming. It was a really awesome interview. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Okay, thank you guys. See you on the other side. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.